Welcome to a very special edition of Established Runs NBA, not injury report analysis show, but the trade deadline show. The trade deadline has just come and passed. That does not mean that any deals you have not seen reported are the end of it. There will be trades that can still be in line in the league's office to be announced, that can still come in as far as like 30 minutes after the official deadline here at 3 o'clock Eastern. So I would not be surprised to see more trades continue to dwindle in as we're talking. But I'm joined by Mike Gallagher. We have, like a dozen, 20 trades to kind of go through and talk about the implications for season-long fantasy, for team rotations, DFS stuff that I think will be useful, and also just kind of our takes on how this shapes up for title contenders as we head down the home stretch. It's weird. We haven't had the All-Star break yet, but we're 2/3 of the way done with the NBA regular season already. So the break comes a little bit further along than you might expect. That starts next Friday.
I think Sacramento only has 8 home games left from what Justin Holiday was saying.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's wild. It's just the schedule is kind of strange this year. So, Mike, how are you doing, my man? I feel like you are in heaven on Christmas morning.
Yeah,
opening up trade after trade after trade.
I love it. More trades coming in here. We got a Schroeder deal. We'll talk about that. Daniel and Tice reunited, and it feels so good with Boston. Yeah, a lot of stuff to talk about here, man. Best trade deadline like ever. I mean, this is so good.
A lot of action. Let's start at the top. I mean, the deal that makes me the happiest on this trade deadline is this Philadelphia and Brooklyn deal, strictly because we had one of the league's most exciting and like fun players to watch for me in Ben Simmons, who just wasn't going to play in Philadelphia. Just wasn't going to happen. So we have him traded to Brooklyn alongside Seth Curry, a bunch of first-round picks, Andre Drummond, and in return, Philadelphia gets James Harden and Paul Millsap. Harden, long coveted by Daryl Morey, brought back into town in Philadelphia with Daryl Morey to pair with Joel Embiid. And the question, everybody has here is, Mike, first and foremost, before we get into breaking down like the ins and outs of the rotations and different stuff, who do you think is the better team? Philadelphia or Brooklyn? Who would you rather kind of go to a playoff series with, Harden and Embiid and company, or Kyrie and KD and Simmons and company?
I'd rather have Brooklyn's team, honestly. Like, I get Joel Embiid's awesome. I get that Harden's awesome, but I've got concerns about Embiid staying healthy. And I mean, I feel like a lot of people don't watch defense anymore, man. Like, people forget how good Ben Simmons is on defense. Yeah. You have an underrated defender in Kevin Durant. You had whatever they're going to do on the back end of that defense. And you got plenty of offense. Kyrie, like, honestly, they didn't need James Harden that much. So maybe Kyrie gets vaccinated now, which would be even better. Or the rules change. We'll see. But when that deal went down, I straight went to go bet Nets to win it. I think that I've been talking about this for months. Like, it's such a good fit because they just missed. Their defense has been bad. They've been the worst defense in the NBA, or one of the worst defenses in the NBA the last month and a half. So getting Ben Simmons out there, I think, really changes things and makes them a really tough team to beat if Kyrie can maybe play all the games and if Durant stays healthy. Do you lose me? Hear me?
Yeah, I might be losing you, so I'm going to be closing things feverishly. Yeah, I think my video is lagging now. Okay. You
sound okay.
I closed a few things, had to shut down. But the thing that I wanted to note with Brooklyn's side of this thing, with Philadelphia's side of this thing is, I think they were in a tough spot, obviously, with Ben Simmons, and I think a lot of people are talking about how they played this so appropriately in terms of Daryl Morey playing a great hand of poker and not settling for like a CJ McCollum or something like that. But I don't know. I really don't know that this was necessarily the deal that I think gives them the best chance at winning the title. I think a lot of this comes down to what version of James Harden do you think we're going to have going forward. And usually you want to bet on long, big sample sizes and regression to the means and different things. But we've seen 3 out of the 4 months of basketball this year, James Harden has shot, from a true shooting percentage level at like 570 or so. His career average is 610, and he had been like 620 or so during kind of his peak championship title contending type years with Houston. And so if he's not that hyper efficient offensive player and he's just a good offensive player, like how much does James Harden move the needle compared to certainly nothing, which is what they had before? They've improved, right? Like they're better than they were yesterday. But relative to some of the other packages that were out there, I don't know. And I think that that's what comes down to. And the McCollum one is not the one that's interesting to me, but like clearly the Kings would have taken Ben Simmons over Domantas Sabonis. I have to imagine that.
I don't though. I mean, they don't. I don't think they value defense at all. So like again, they're just.
You think they would have valued Sabonis over Simmons?
I wouldn't be surprised.
With the Kings for
I would not be surprised. Yeah.
Yeah. So my thought is that like a Haliburton and Hield type package with picks, I think would have been out there for Simmons. And I don't know how much like Embiid's using 40% of the possessions. So what are you gaining from Harden? You're gaining. This is the question: is he hyper efficient anymore? I don't know.
And to add to that, they play slow,
which is good.
So Harden is a really, really good half court player, but now you're slowing down the pace. You're asking him to do harder stuff in half court, which is an area he's been really bad relative to his previous years. He's still pretty good.
Yeah.
But like his efficiency off drives is way down. His drive rate is down even now. Even beside the fouling stuff, like he's just not playing as well. Sure. You can go back to the Houston days when you make all the jokes about it, and then he kind of comes in and gets in better shape and looks good. Like maybe that's it. Who knows? But
the hamstring thing though he's missed a lot of games.
Time. This is the other hammy. Yeah, this is the other hammy from last year, but he's had the hammy he has right now. He's had 3 other times in his career too. So as you get older, man, those multiple hammy pulls, they get a little bit tougher to overcome every time.
Yeah. So I'm of the opinion, from my vantage point, I thought this is a home run for Brooklyn. I think this is an absolute home run for Brooklyn. I think while I would have had Brooklyn most of the year up there as a potential title favorite, there were a couple things that I was thinking in that context. One was that James Harden would be the James Harden we were accustomed to, not this version that we've seen this year, which is concerning to me. 2, I thought that they weren't going to have to run Kevin Durant into the ground, which they ended up having to do because of the Kyrie vaccination stuff and him not being able to play. Now, I mean, we'll see what they get with Ben Simmons. Like the Ben Simmons, when he's going to play, how is he going to play after taking all this time off? Like those are question marks, but I don't think they're big question marks. And then I think getting the shooting surrounding him with Curry, Kyrie, KD, this is it. This is the ideal scenario for Ben Simmons. And this is where you can take Ben Simmons from being a all-star level player under a situation that I think was good, but not great. I think people actually overrate how poor the situation in Philadelphia was for him. I think it was pretty good. But this is ideal. I mean, you can play Ben Simmons at the 5. And Ben Simmons at the 5 lineups with all this shooting around it are going to be offensive juggernauts. And then defensively, Ben Simmons and KD as a 4-5 combo brings a lot of switchability, defensive protection at the rim. And now those bigs that they have that are better suited for like spot roles, the 16 to 18 minutes, they can get them in those roles. And they've got shooting everywhere. So I think Brooklyn to me got better. I know I saw BetMGM brought their title odds down and the 76ers title odds way up. I think the 76ers got better immediately as well. So I don't want to demean that the 76ers aren't a better team than they were before. They absolutely are. But the 76ers better win in the next year or two because the chicken's coming home to roost on like this extension that they're going to give Harden. There's just going to be no space to do anything and no assets to do anything, which Morey's comfortable operating in. He's very good at finding guys on the periphery of the league. But I think a lot of teams in the league are getting better at that. So I don't think it's as easy pickings as it was for him, a decade ago. In terms of like DFS and fantasy stuff, what are your first takeaways in terms of fantasy value for the trade and how things are impacted here?
Just add a couple things on some things you mentioned too. Yeah, I mean, like don't forget back when the Warriors had KD, one of the reasons they were so good is because Draymond kind of quarterbacked the defense and KD rim protected, and we saw KD's block rate
Yeah.
spike, and that defense was crazy good. And with players who were pretty good defenders too, but the defenders in this team aren't nearly as good as that Warriors team, but they're going to be better, like average defensively. Having a point defender changes so many things. But to answer your question, Ben Simmons is a low usage guy, right? So you're taking a Harden high usage guy, and giving more usage to Kyrie, giving it to Durant. Obviously, those guys will benefit. And some reports saying that KD could be back shortly after the break. So those guys will certainly be, top 10 players in fantasy when they're humming together. We'll pick the matchups apart too. Ben will be pretty good. Ben will probably be he'll probably level out like 7K. What do you say, or 7.5K for his price tag on DFS?
That would be my guess. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of Ben. I think the right way to think of Ben is potentially a souped up Draymond Green.
Yep. Yep. His steals are going to be insane, man. Brooklyn plays fast too. So they're adding even more speed. So there's more possessions, lower usage. So I think those guys are slam dunks. I think Seth Curry is kind of neutral as far as his value change.
Yeah.
He'll probably have a little bit of a small.
I think his minutes will come down a little bit.
Minutes will come down a little bit, but he's going to be so open. He's actually been struggling a little bit. So probably more of a drop than anything if you have him.
I think his assist rate will drop as well. They've been asking him to do a little bit more ball handling in Philadelphia. So I think it's a slight dock to Seth Curry's value.
Yep. You're right. And then, we'll see what's up. So they're going to play – they'll probably start Patty Mills most of the time. We've seen them play Harden, Kyrie, and Mills a lot. That'll probably be an okay matchup. We didn't get much going on here, late stuff. But, they're okay doing that in certain matchups. They run Kessler Edwards at the 3 and the 4. That'll probably continue. They still got some perimeter defenders with Bruce Brown, DeAndre Bembry. We'll see what they do with Drummond, who could be valuable.
I think we'll get 2 weeks of Andre Drummond big stat lines. They might be a little bit spread out during the course of the second half, but like Andre Drummond's going to be a guy to soak up, these until Kevin Durant gets back. He's going to be a secondary offensive piece to soak up alongside Kyrie when Kyrie can play, and when they can't, they'll play through Drummond a little bit more. So I think Drummond's got some short-term value. Long-term, very questionable, because I'm not even sure. I'm not entirely sure he's not just a matchup dependent, 18 minutes a night type guy long term. But short term, I think there's a chance that he's got some 26 to 30 minute nights where he's putting up some big numbers.
Yep.
On the Philadelphia side of things, how do you think Harden impacts Embiid? I mean, like Embiid's got a 40% usage rate, and then I guess Tobias didn't get moved. That was some of the rumors that Tobias might get moved. We'll see if there's anything that comes in late under the deadline here, but you got to think it's a downgrade for Tobias at the very least. The question is it a downgrade to Embiid? Do we think Embiid settles back into like low 30s usage instead of this like high 30s usage he's had most of the season?
Yeah, I mean, maybe some efficiency boost, but not a lot, right? Like Harden hasn't really been the kind of guy that
creates vertical opportunities for guys. Embiid doesn't get a lot of vertical stuff.
Exactly.
So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, so I think he's definitely a hit. It's it's kind of like when, almost like not to bring the same thing up again, but like on the offensive side when Kevin Durant joined Steph. I mean, Steph was so good, but Kevin Durant being such a magnet for defense made him so open. He was so able to take advantage of that with his 67 true shooting. Like, I don't think Embiid can be much more efficient than he is, given the way he plays. So, you're talking about maybe a teeny tiny boost of efficiency in exchanging, probably like 4 or 5 points off his usage rate, maybe more. I think Tobias is obviously getting a hit, but we've seen before. I mean, we always are concerned about Tobias, and every time he's just putting up similar value. And they'll probably manage Embiid here and there. Obviously, Harden to be managed here and there too. So obviously losing value, but they're not panicking about it.
And I'm really interested to see one thing that I'm very interested to see here with Embiid is, do they go back to screen roll heavy type games? Because that's really not any of the stuff that Philadelphia does. And I don't know if it's because they don't want dudes just smashing into Embiid's legs all day long on screens, or if they don't want the combination of smashing into his legs and then going up verticality for lobs and different stuff. If they'd rather just dunk the ball into him in the post and let him work with his big butt down on people and just back people down. But they have not used the pick and roll game aggressively in Philadelphia's tenure with Embiid there. And James, that's been his thing, right? Like pick and roll has been his thing most of his career. Pick and roll into isolations, into getting switches, pick and rolls into attacking the basket, pick and rolls into setting up lobs for bigs. So I'm interested to see if the offense moves at all in terms of the way that Philadelphia has been playing. I don't think, from James's fantasy perspective, I don't think it really changes him too much. The hope is that you get a trade-off where you get a little bit extra efficiency that you haven't seen early in the season here. I think he's probably going to lose a little bit on the point side, a little bit on the rebound side. I think it's a kind of a slight dock across the board that if he makes up for it with efficiency, it's fine. But if he doesn't, then it's trouble. And I think Tobias takes the big hit here.
Yeah, definitely the biggest one, but I still think he's going to be okay. He just does so many things. He's usually really, really efficient. He'll get a lot of really good looks too.
Yeah.
Then all these other guys that were, picking up minutes here and there. And I'll add one thing that you mentioned, and I was watching ESPN, and they were talking about like, oh yeah, like Embiid is a roll man. You were kind of touching on it. Like he was 17th in roll man possessions last year, 10th this year, as you were
he's
alluding
not
to.
Used
like,
that way.
It's not, he's not used that way. So I don't think he's going to be able to adapt his game the way that people may want him to. We've seen this with like Westbrook. We've seen this with it eventually is coming for Giannis. That was a whole big thing, but like Giannis is built for that, because his way he can kind of elevate and he's so agile. But yeah, I'm pretty much agreed. Everything's going to have just some stats behind it.
So that was the big trade of the day. I think that was the big one that we were all expecting to kind of happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think there have been some trades that came out of the blue, and the one that came out of the blue kind of right before was this Kristaps Porzingis deal, where Porzingis is traded to Washington, and in return, Dallas gets Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. Now, Davis Bertans has this huge contract. He hasn't even been playing and cracking the Washington rotation. I saw some speculation on Twitter that this might be more about Kristaps Porzingis' health than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
In that Dallas might be in a situation where they know the knee situation that he's dealing with is not recoverable for this season. Washington's probably in 2022, 2023 mode already as they shut down Bradley Beal.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be just viewing this as get us off of the two assets, condense the dollars into one contract, and get a player who maybe is recoverable when he's healthy next year. But Dallas picking up Dinwiddie is interesting because they were rumored to be in the buyout market for Goran Dragic, which Goran Dragic was traded from Toronto to San Antonio. Now, Dragic has been working out in Miami. Dragic never wanted to leave Miami. So I was surprised when I saw a list of suitors today talk about, where Goran Dragic could end up in a buyout situation, because the Spurs clearly aren't going to keep Goran Dragic. And Miami was not listed, but Dallas was the favorite, is what everybody was saying. This, you would have to wonder, does that make it less likely that they go after Goran Dragic in the buyout market? Also, does this hurt Jalen Brunson a bunch? Jalen Brunson's a free agent at the end of the year, and this could be viewed as insurance on Brunson in terms of why they're picking him up. This also is going to force, positionally, I think this is going to make Luka guard, even more often 3s and 4s than primary ball handlers, which he doesn't do a lot of. He's been moved off ball a lot this year anyway. But what is Dinwiddie's role with Dallas going to be? Is it basically going to be what Trey Burke's been doing for them?
I mean, it's not going to be a big one. I mean, they'd be pretty foolish to take any opportunity from Luka or Brunson. But the thing you were bringing up earlier, little hit to Brunson, right? Because we saw him cook in those non-Luka minutes, and now you're going to share the ball a little bit with Spencer Dinwiddie. But yeah, definitely I'm more concerned about his upside. And on top of that, too, a lot of the upside in Brunson was if Luka, who's been hurt a lot this year, a lot of ankle injuries, if he ever got hurt, he would be mooning. But now, he wouldn't quite be, because he'd have to share the ball. Minutes wouldn't be outrageous. So, that's probably the biggest fantasy takeaway. Obviously, you could just pretty much drop Spencer Dinwiddie, I think, mostly everywhere. He hasn't been playing well anyways. But, interesting pickup. Davis Bertans, maybe he comes back to life with Luka. Definitely makes sense as kind of a shooter. Obviously, that contract's going to be bad. But, I mean, it's fine. Like you said, the headline here is, this has been the whole thing, honestly. Back when I went to Summer League, when KP was a rookie, I was there sitting courtside, and he would just go back into the hall during games, just like stretch out. Like, what the hell? Ever since that happened, I was like, what's with this dude? He can't stay healthy, man. On its knees, its hips, it's all these injuries that are so concerning for bigs. And obviously, I think this is probably the straw that broke the camel's back with this new knee injury. So, yeah, the question is like, oh my God, is he getting shut down? We'll talk about the Wizards in a second. But yeah, I think they're just, and then there's the, did Luka hate KP? There was rumors about that. That's something that you could think about as well. But as far as on-court stuff goes, I mean, they've got enough depth. They've got Dorian Finney-Smith's a great contract. Reggie Bullock's been playing really well for them. Dwight Powell's been pretty solid. They got a pretty solid rotation. I don't think it affects Luka, obviously, but I'm a little bit concerned about Brunson's upside.
If anything, I think it helps Luka a little bit. You get Bertans provides the similar type of floor spacing to Porzingis without any of the rebounding. And so I think Luka might see, these elevated rebound numbers we've seen of late, they might hold during the rest of the season. He also is functionally like there's different lineup combination. They almost always play him against like 3s and 4s defensively anyway. So it's really not a big deal. They just kind of like let him roam defensively instead of being on primary ball handlers, but they're shifting the direction of the roster even more to where he has to play bigger positions. So I think it's actually a small help to Luka, if anything. Keeping it on the Wizards, they made a bunch of deals. They also sent out Montrezl Harrell to Charlotte, which we'll talk about Harrell's value in a second, but let's keep it on Washington side of things. That frees up Thomas Bryant and Daniel Gafford to handle the majority of the center minutes until Porzingis gets back. Yep. And when Porzingis gets back is an unknown at this point. When Porzingis does get back, we're back in the crowded rotation in the 4 and 5 situation that we were before, where with Harrell, with Kuzma, with Hachimura, with Bertans, with Bryant, with Gafford, they just didn't have enough spots to play these guys. And so from a Washington perspective, that's why it makes me think, like, first and foremost, it makes me think that Porzingis' injury might be more substantial than anybody's leading on. I mean, the Wizards just shut down Beal, and then they go out and get Porzingis, right? So, like, but what are your thoughts on how the Washington rotation looks in the immediate, assuming that Porzingis is sidelined and hurt? Do you think we see, more of the full 48 minutes from Bryant and Gafford and potentially unlocking their upside from a fantasy perspective?
Yeah, and I just updated the depth chart a little bit and sideline Beal, but more focused on like the actual roster. Let's see if it updated here. It did not. I'll check again. But yeah, man, people were coming after me for tweeting about Thomas Bryant, and the whole reason behind this. Besides, I'll get to Gafford in a second. Look at the players on this team, man. How many of these dudes do you trust to get offense? Like one, Kyle Kuzma, and who else? Like all these other dudes. Corey Kispert plays off ball. You can't run any offense through any of these dudes. Rui's been terrible. Bertans is going to have to take him off. He's off on update. But there's no offense on this team. And like it's been proven that Thomas Bryant before he got hurt was I think second in the NBA in catch and shoot among centers behind Karl-Anthony Towns. This team's going to need spacing in the worst freaking way. Daniel Gafford can't play more than like 7-minute stints consistently. He's hurt all the time. He was behind Montrezl Harrell and Thomas Bryant. I mean, Gafford, like for over a year now, we were attacking centers against Washington. I don't understand. Like people were coming at me so hard. I was like, "What?
There's a lot of Daniel Gafford stands on the internet."
Yeah, I don't know what the hell is going on here, but yeah, I think Bryant, like you said, is going to probably lock down most of the minutes. They did bring Bertans in the mix. Maybe they bring Anthony Gill. We see Anthony Gill sub in at times to play some center for them. They like him. I don't think he's going to be a fantasy factor, but. I mean, we've seen Bryant play these long stints, and again, like Ish Smith can't space the floor. Howell Neto is not a great floor spacer. KCP's fine, but he's not a ball handler. Denny Avdia, they've been really forcing him as a ball handler. That's probably going to be something more of a thing. So I think he's probably a sneaky beneficiary with Spencer gone, just because they have no ball handling. Yeah, Hachimura can't play big minutes, so it's just a crapshoot. And so I'm just thinking like, okay, who could you get offense from? And the answer is Thomas Bryant until KP gets back, and he doesn't really have a minutes cap anymore. So, yeah, we'll see. I got to take Harrell off here too. I kind of was rushing into this, but yeah, that's kind of
I think Thomas Bryant and Kyle Kuzma are beneficiaries right now. I think it is impacted highly by Porzingis' availability. Obviously, I think Porzingis you could make the argument that he's a beneficiary, but it's on a per game basis. And I think his game's ceiling got lower moving to Washington. They're not playing for anything. So I think those are the small winners, but it does depend on Porzingis here. And then in the backcourt, right, like Ish Smith or Raul Neto, if one of those guys emerges, like they can be valuable in deeper leagues. Ish has the ability to be valuable in all formats because he can be assist heavy and he can score. He's a disaster defensively, so we'll see if he can hold big minutes. This should also open up more playing time for Corey Kispert and Denny Avdija, the players that they really want to get on the floor more. And I think by clearing Beal with the injury situation, by clearing Dinwiddie at the guard spot, now they kind of have a clear path to be able to get playing time for Kispert and Avdija. I mean, you look at this roster, and basically all of the 2 and 3 minutes should go to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Kispert, and Avdija, right? Like that's almost every game. So now we've got a clear path for Avdija and Kispert to get more playing time, and I think those guys will be better as well.
Yep. And yeah, I'll add, as Al mentions, actually, in one of my deeper leagues, I picked up Ish Smith so fast. I picked up Ish Smith before the underdog tweet came out. Like that's how fast it was to add him. Because actually, when we saw that trade, and I was like, Ish Smith getting traded to, I was like, oh, Spencer's probably gone, and I had Ish Smith's page loaded up. So I think he's a pretty good pickup, man. Just some sheer opportunity. Yeah, and we know Ish could do something, right? We've seen him, pay off these super cheap tags in the right matchups. Plays fast too, so that helps the other guys as well. So yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting fantasy spot.
The other trade that Washington did is they shipped out Aaron Holiday as well, so that cleared backcourt minutes as well. And tonight, for DFS purposes, we'll talk about it on the live show at 5:00 Eastern with myself and Mike. Let's play 3 today instead of Ernie Banks. Let's play 2. That'll be our third show of the day together, but. We'll talk about that more. The Wizards are going to be real thin tonight. But this is an opportunity in the backcourt for real minutes going forward. I think Neto is going to have the upper hand, but I don't know if his body is going to hold up either. So this also could be a situation where you see 10-day guards roll through for Washington during the course of the season as well. Point guard specifically, because they are very, very thin on the point guard spot now. Okay.
Yeah, they'll probably add somebody in somewhere along the way, just because you just can't have that lack of ball handling in the NBA. It's embarrassingly low.
Another team that was very, very active at the deadline here was the Boston Celtics, who've been playing really, really well of late. And then they went here at the deadline. They added Derek White. They added Daniel Tice before the deadline as well. Yep. They sent out Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford. They also sent out, Bol and PJ Dozier, who were on the roster just for a few weeks, basically to be able to clear space. So those weren't big ones. But Derek White, and they sent out Dennis Schroeder in that deal with Daniel Tice. So they get.
I haven't got a chance to delete those guys yet, but.
What was that?
I said I haven't got that happened while we were on, so I didn't get a chance to delete these guys yet. So.
Right when we went on. So in terms of the roster makeup now, you've got, basically Derek White and Marcus Smart handling the point guard spots, along with some backup too. You'll get Peyton Pritchard, who hadn't played as much. He'll get back into the rotation a little bit more consistently, I think, as the backup 1. And then I think, having Tice there is just a little bit more insurance, at the big spots. I think it's mostly to clear Schroeder was mostly the idea there. But I think it gives them a little bit more backup insurance. I don't think it's going to impact Robert Williams or Al Horford in terms of playing time or anything like that. I think that was just kind of an insurance move. So what are your thoughts on what the Celtics pulled off at the deadline here?
That was pretty good. I mean, Derek White didn't overpay. Romeo Langford, doesn't really have the upside I think that we thought he would. Size with, lack of shooting, some defense. It's kind of tough to be a rotation player if you don't have a real skill you could hang your hat on if you're not an insanely good defender, which he is not, unfortunately. But yeah, Derek White's a good pickup, man. Really good. It's worth noting that Ami Udoka really wants to play 8. He doesn't really want to play this kind of, we'll go 9 sometimes, 10 some other times. So now as you mentioned, Peyton Pritchard will probably be that 8th man. Derek White being the main super sub, Grant Williams, and that'll kind of be it with their rotation too. So that's kind of where they're going to be. I think it's a really good rotation. I think Derek White is a very good fit. He'll have to learn this system. The system's pretty complicated, honestly, defensively. just because they like pre-switch and they do a lot of stuff that the Spurs don't really do. The Spurs basically just like say, okay, switch and go inside on us and let Pirtle do the damage. Where like it's, and I'm probably going in the weeds, but yeah, it'll be an adjustment for him. So I expect his minutes to be low. Obviously, White loses a lot of value here. Probably droppable, honestly. I don't really think anybody else is affected. Like Smart's not really scoring a lot anyways.
Yeah.
Maybe his minutes come down just a tick, but
if you think of it as Derek White sort of taking Josh Richardson's role for right now with the opportunity to earn more as the season goes on, I think that's kind of where you want to be. And from, most of you out there playing in like 10 team leagues, 12 team leagues, 10 team leagues, that's going to be droppable. 12 team leagues, that's going to be very, very fringy depending on how big your rosters are. So you can probably get away from Derek White. On the other side of things, on San Antonio's side, clearing out Thaddeus Young, clearing out Drew Eubanks, clearing out Derek White, picking up Goran Dragic, who I assume they're going to buy out. Picking up Josh Richardson. What do you think things look like now for San Antonio, who has a lot of new names on here? Tomas Satoransky, Romeo Langford, Josh Richardson. They're a team that is drifting down the standings in the West. I have some slight concerns on DeJounte shutdown at some point.
No, don't say that.
I have some slight concerns. You just look at this roster, and it just doesn't look like they're going to be trying for wins down the stretch. I have some slight concerns there, but I think this opens up a big opportunity, I think, for Devin Vassell and Lonnie Walker. I think getting Derek White out of there. I think Josh Richardson will still play some, but I think these guys have more upside to take on more roles. And I think as the season goes on, I just think you're going to see Doug McDermott phased out a little bit more. Like these guys that they don't really need to play to get deeper and deeper looks at Vassell, Lonnie Walker, Trey Jones, Primo, those types of guys. What are your thoughts on what the Spurs have done here?
Yeah, fantasy wise, Vassell shouldn't be on any waiver wires. Not like 8 teams, but any sort of category based leagues. His minutes are really safe now. Really excited about what's coming for him. Trey Jones will be in the rotation now. We know Popovich had considered Derek White not only as starting 2, but also his backup 1 at times. That's how we saw, pretty much. I always call it the Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum guard rotation. That's kind of what they were running. So you're losing a guy, Josh Richardson, who doesn't handle the ball anymore. Sure, they tried it with the Sixers, but now Trey Jones will get all the DeJountes, and DeJounte has enough length. So I think Trey Jones is someone to watch, especially, I don't share, and maybe I'm biased, but I hope that DeJounte doesn't get shut down.
Trust me, I don't want DeJounte to get shut down either.
Yeah, I know, but we gotta get the people the facts. Here. Yeah, I bet DeJounte under points rebounds. You've changed me, man. I used to be such a biased boy, but now all about winning. But so Trey Jones will be locked in the rotation. Lonnie Walker would be worth a pickup, I think. I think Josh Richardson's on the board. Maybe he gets more solidified rotation minutes. We'll see if they keep Satoransky. I think Romeo is kind of just meh. And yeah, I got to also. I just plugged these names in here: Satoransky and Romeo. So Vassell's up here. He's obviously going to be a very, very key part of the rotation now.
Yeah. I think the rotation now is going to look something like, DeJounte at the 1 with Trey as the backup 1, maybe some overlap with them. We'll see. Yep. I don't think a lot, but maybe some. And then I think you'll see Lonnie Walker, Josh Richardson, and Devin Vassell pick up most of the minutes at the 2 and the 3 spot. You'll see a little bit of Keldon at the 3, depending on when Keita Bates-Diop is healthy, depending on if they want to get looks at Romeo Langford. If they want to get looks at Romeo Langford, he'd be in that 2-3 mix as well. It's always hard to say if these teams are actually interested in acquiring some of the pieces they bring back and whether they want to get in-depth looks at them or they're just going to give spot looks at them. But Romeo Langford, it falls into that category where I don't know if the motivation was to get a look at Langford or the motivation was to get the pick from the Celtics. I think the center spot gets real cleared out, right? Jakob Poeltl is there. And then I think they like what they've seen from Jock Landale, but most importantly, they've got Zach Collins back in the mix now. And Zach Collins can play a little bit of 4 or 5, but I think really they took an injury-related flyer on signing him in the offseason. They want to look at him down the stretch. And so I think it will come at both the 4 and the 5 spot in different moments. But I think Zach Collins, as long as his health allows, I think he's going to get a good look here down the stretch. And I think those of you in 14-team leagues and deeper should be having your eye on Zach Collins because I think he could make an impact later in the second half of the season.
I think now, I mean, we
You
saw
think
him
so?
play pretty key minutes last night or 2 nights ago. It's all blurred to me. As the backup five, he's pretty much iced Jock Landale. No more
Yeah.
Eubanks. Not that you're worried about it. No more Thad. He's getting every night rotation minutes, and like before he got hurt all the time, he was really good per minute. A blocks and threes guy, not a
Yeah.
lot of threes, but he was a really good shot blocker. Okay, free throw shooter for a big. Like that's a lot of stuff you like out of a fantasy guy. So I actually rather like him. And if Pirtle ever went
Do you
down,
think he's an ad? Do you think he's an ad in 12 teams? In 12
I
team
mean,
leagues?
if you need a big man, like I'd rather have him. I mean, I'd rather have Gafford and Bryant and those guys.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'll think of a name that would be. If anyone has an idea, if they want to drop somebody, I'll let you
Yeah.
know.
I
But
think he's on the radar in 14 team.
Yeah.
And I think 12 team he's watch worthy, but I don't think he's quite there yet. And then I think 10 team he's not close yet.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way that I'm thinking of.
It's probably ripped. If you're desperate for, blocks would be really hard to come by. So if you just need a little more to go over the top,
yeah,
I think he's an option.
Yeah. All right. Some other trade situations to kind of talk through here. The big Bucks 4-team trade. The Bucks are the defending champs. We can talk about them and the Suns. A rematch of the finals is on tonight. We can also talk about those two teams and how they added at the trade deadline. The Bucks shipped off Donte DiVincenzo and got back Serge Ibaka and 2 future second-round picks. What are your thoughts about this deal for the Bucks?
And I'll add really quick, Zach Collins has played all center for what that's worth, but they could grow him into a 4 for sure. But whatever. Like you were saying, it's pretty much just you're just not paying Donte. You didn't need him. You were barely playing him. Getting Grayson Allen has been, as much as we hate the dude, it's been a really good pickup for them, and he's filled a need that they have to use. Obviously, I have to update this and move Wes Matthews up, but yeah, it's fine. Like obviously, Serge just will band-aid till Brook gets back, and it's a thing you need with the way that your defense functions with allowing people to get to the basket. You want someone who can kind of protect the rim a little bit. Obviously, Serge is nowhere near the level he was even just 2 years ago with that back injury really slowing him down. But it's fine. A pretty low cost move to help you get there, and probably give you a little bit of a slightly smaller edge to maybe make a run. But I think they could have probably done better, honestly. But it's basically just it's a fine trade.
Do you think this is any sort of indication that Brook Lopez is not close or potentially not going to be available this season?
No, I mean he's starting to do some stuff, so I think he could be back. Probably pretty close to the playoffs. Back surgeries are really tricky. He's had not too. He's had a couple back things. It's obviously that foot injury. I think it was a Jones fracture when he had with the Nets. But yeah, and I think it's just kind of a little bit of help. We'll see. He's doing some shooting already, so it should be probably like maybe a week or two before the season starts. I think he should be back.
And then from a fantasy perspective, most of the fantasy value is actually on the other side of this trade with both Detroit and Sacramento. In Sacramento, they did a lot at the deadline. They really remade their whole roster over. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they acquired Domantas Sabonis. They shipped out Tyrese Haliburton. They acquired Justin Holiday and Jeremy Lamb, and now Donte DiVincenzo and Trey Lyles and Josh Jackson. And so they really redid the 2s and 3s. And we knew once they got rid of Haliburton, there was some and Haliburton and Hield, there was some opportunity at the 2-3 to open up. Certainly, they filled that with some bodies in Justin Holiday, Jeremy Lamb, Josh Jackson, but they've been tied to DiVincenzo for a while, going back to the Bogdan Bogdanovic trade that got overturned basically for tampering situations. So what do you think? Do you think we're going to see Donte DiVincenzo get into the situation where he's playing substantial minutes? I mean, he was capped in Milwaukee because I think partially health, but also partially competition issues. I mean, Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton were there, and they like Wes Matthews enough to get him minutes. Do you think we can see like 28 minutes a night from Donte DiVincenzo, or do you think this is still going to be a situation where his minutes are managed because they have some of this depth with Justin Holiday and Davion Mitchell and Jeremy Lamb and so on and so forth?
Yeah, and I'll add Jamias Ramsey and bench press king Robert Woodyard have been cut since we hopped on the show, so I will take them off. But yeah, interesting, right? So you have to think about who his competition for minutes are and who is not. Fox and Mitchell are not. Justin Holiday, Jeremy Lamb are. And if Donte DiVincenzo comes out there and balls out, I think they would prioritize giving him minutes. So I think he's like worth a look. But again, like Fox, really high usage. Domantas Sabonis, really high usage. He's not going to really have like a big enough usage role. And yeah, he's been good in steals. He's outstanding in transition, which Gentry will try to maximize. what they want to play. So I think it's a really good fit. I'm like mildly interested. Like I'd rather actually honestly stash like Zach Collins in a vacuum, just 'cause I like the upside more. But yeah, I think it's like a pretty good fit. But he's got a couple of hurdles to get to consistent value. If De'Aaron Fox did go down, we know he's had that grade 3 ankle sprain from a few years ago, 2 years ago, and he's been sitting out. Like if that flares up and they tank, then he would be a guy I could see really opening him up. So pretty solid like low end guy, but I think some things could open up.
And Fox and Mitchell aren't necessarily competition for minutes, but the desire to get Mitchell on the floor is going to overlap with Fox some. And so as a result, there's still probably like 10 minutes that seeps over into the 2-guard spot for one of Fox or Mitchell, depending on how you classify them there. And so I do think like Fox's status does impact Dante's ceiling quite a bit in terms of the minutes. And so I think that's the way those things can work. But I got to think just because they were tied to him going back to last offseason, that I got to think that this is a spot that they've been coveting him and they want to give him an opportunity. Whereas Jeremy Lamb,
I'll add really quick. Oh, sorry. I was going to say,
where those two guys were secondary acquisitions for Sabonis.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll add, I actually had Dante. I picked him up like right when that trade went down, and I dropped him for Ish. And I play in a lot of leagues with people who are pretty sharp, like Winky's always in our content. A couple other people. Actually, no one picked him up. So I was stashing Josh Christopher with hopes on Eric Gordon trade, and I have since dropped Josh Christopher for Dante. So I'm interested in picking up Dante.
Now, with no Marvin Bagley on Sacramento anymore, that opens up minutes at the 4, but I think they can slide Harrison Barnes to that spot. Certainly, I think that's where they're more comfortable playing him. The other thing is here, they didn't move Rashawn Holmes.
Yeah.
So the question is, are they going to start Sabonis alongside Rashawn Holmes and have Sabonis play as a 4? Sabonis played as, alongside Miles Turner a lot of his time in Indy, so alongside another big. The fit is not as good with Rashawn Holmes because you don't have either one of those guys that can stretch the floor. So I think Rashawn Holmes has just gone to a backup center spot, which is just like, this is, this is like the plight of bad teams is you like find somebody that you sign for an under the radar deal in Rashawn Holmes and you get a lot of value out of him and then you extend him and then you replace him. This is something that Phoenix used to do when they were really struggling for a while with guards. They would just do this over and over and over again with guards. And it's just like the plight of bad front offices because you end up like paying for past production and then compromising the value of the asset by extending it and then replacing it. And so like Rashawn Holmes, I don't know what they do with now other than I guess he's the backup center, Sabonis the starting center. Because I think it's going to be hard to play those two alongside each other. And so in Sacramento, there's certainly some minutes that are opened up at the 4. They do get Trey Lyles. They do get Josh Jackson to add some competition to this roster as well. But it should be an opportunity for Metu. And this should be another reason to feel good about the opportunity at the 2 and the 3 spot because being a little bit thinner at the 4 can slide Harrison Barnes minutes to the 4 and open up more minutes at the 2 and the 3 from Holiday, Lamb, and DiVincenzo.
Yeah, I agree. Shout out to Tyler Ulis with the old.
That was the name I had in mind, thinking about Phoenix and how they develop the guard and then replace him.
So good. But I'm with you. Definitely more Harry B at the 4. Tough scene for Rashawn Holmes, man. Hope his mom send him and his mom my best.
And he's got to be a drop, right? In 10 and 12.
I think so.
I mean, he's certainly got, we're talking about Zach Collins type, stash as an upside. Holmes certainly has that if Sabonis went down or was done for the year, different things like that. But I think the paths there are a little bit challenging. All right. Bagley to the Pistons. What do you expect for Bagley? What do you think the role here is? I mean, they have big man minutes available. The question is, will they view him as a 4 or a 5? If they view him as a 5, they can have straight competition with Isaiah Stewart for that role. I think they like Stewart a lot. So I think they're going to view him as more of a 4. And they've obviously, they like Jeremy Grant, but they've been shopping Jeremy Grant a ton. So what do you think? Is Bagley just a backup big that they're getting a kind of, in their eyes, a free look at? I mean, they gave up Lyles and Josh Jackson, so I don't think the price wasn't very high.
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, obviously, very, very high draft pick, perhaps the most high draft pick ever as far as opportunity cost goes. But yeah, I think that's it. I don't think that they're going to play Jeremy Grant at the three very much. They've kind of got their perimeter minutes covered with Cade and Sadiq and their guards that they like. So yeah, he'll probably just get maybe he competes with Olynyk a little bit. We'll see if there's some shutdown stuff to open up minutes to get a longer look. But pretty upsetting outcome, honestly, for Marvin Bagley and potential upside.
You think it's just like a 20-minute a night type role for Bagley right now?
Probably. Well, the team's healthy, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they run Grant. They ran Grant at the three like a little bit earlier in the Twin KC season, his first season, and they kind of got away from it. So maybe they go back to it, just get him a longer leash. Because it's not like, Frank Jackson, Hamidou Diallo, those guys have been kind of at times been out of the rotation. They're in there now. But, maybe that happens. So maybe you can get like a consistent 23, 24-minute role, which, something, but not something you're too pumped about.
All right, let's talk about Phoenix and what they did at the deadline. Small moves, but a Phoenix team that has been struggling with depth a little bit recently, just because their roster is a little bit older. Once they lost like Cam Payne and Jay Crowder at the same time, like things got really, really messy in the guards and the wings because they don't have a lot of confidence in Elfrid Payton. They went out and got Aaron Holiday. They went out and got Torrey Craig. They gave up Jalen Smith. To talk about opportunity costs with draft picks, Jalen Smith gets reunited with Tyrese Haliburton, who the Suns passed over. To take Jalen Smith, what a difference that could have been in terms of different paths for the Suns. But they get Torrey Craig, they get Aaron Holiday here. I think this is really, really small stuff for fantasy and DFS purposes. I don't think it really makes much of a difference. Outside of, I do think this added depth brings back the CP3 minutes, brings back the Devin Booker minutes. I like these guys playing like 38 to 40 a night as they've been like the last week or two. I don't think is sustainable. I think the Suns understand that, and I think they went out and they got a little bit of more roster depth to allow to pull back and push the brakes a little bit on these guys. Really, really big minutes. I still think Booker settles in around 35, 36 a night, so I don't think you're losing a ton there. But I think CP3's value is going to come down a little bit just because I think they have more guys that they'll trust to play minutes, especially when they get Cam Payne back. And CP3 will settle back down into the low 30s at some point.
Yeah, interesting fit for like Aaron Holiday, who's really a guy who fights through screens and pretty good pick and roll guy. The Suns don't really want you to fight through screens; they want you to switch. So I'm interested to see how he develops into that role. I think he could beat out Cam Payne, but obviously, who cares? And then, as I said on the injury show, Torrey Craig is sneaky to me because he was a really important piece for them in the postseason for defense when they made the run, when they used him kind of as almost like the way Brad Stevens would use Semi Ojeleye at times, but a little bit of a better defender than he is. And the reason why this is noteworthy is, and I've been saying this too, like Monty wants to go small. So those JaVale McGee minutes, I think he wants to like do away with them. And like they're certainly happy going with a Jay Crowder, Torrey Craig kind of front court and just do switch everything. They switch off ball actions. Like they're just so fun to watch defensively. If you ever get time to watch the Suns and just like watch their player movement on both sides. It's like one thing I've been watching. I think it's maybe like a smarter basketball fan, but started getting a little bit sidetracked there. I actually have to delete Chandler Hutchison off this roster, but yeah, like not a lot of big fantasy value, but I think it makes him a better team though. So it's that's good.
And I expect Cameron Payne to hold his role when he's back healthy, but I just think that I think Elf Payton is what they want. They want these Aaron Holiday minutes to be what they've used with Elf Payton, which is insurance, third kind of point guard. You can play him alongside Devin Booker in those minutes because Devin Booker can ball handle. They can have Devin Booker do all the initiation, all the creating. Aaron Holiday can just be out there defensively. And so I think that's what the Aaron Holiday acquisition is. And Torrey Craig just gives much needed added depth, right? Because now they have a spot that they can play Cam Johnson as the backup 3 and not need Cam Johnson to be your backup 3 and 4, which is what they were needing at times. And so that added depth is just huge. And Torrey Craig brings some versatility in the way that he can play as well, and some small ball center stuff that they like doing with Jay Crowder. They can do that stuff with Torrey Craig as well. So I think they just got deeper. They got a little bit better there.
And I'll add just quickly, Cam Johnson definitely loses some value here. Again, not a lot, but if he's like the worst player on your team and you want to get somebody who has a little more upside, I think it makes sense.
Yeah. All right, let's kind of recap the last few minutes here with just kind of big picture on first and foremost championship level teams. I think teams that you thought before or after the deadline could be in the running for title contention and what they did at the deadline. Who do you think took the biggest step forward in terms of your belief in their championship odds at this trade deadline?
I mean, it's obviously the Sixers as far as like improvement on their odds, right? Because they went from a negative or not a nothing to a very good player. Well, in essence, they turn on. If you don't think about the picks and everything and their team, right? They basically traded Seth Curry and Drummond for freaking James Harden. Obviously, there's a lot more context to that, if you guys understand what I'm saying here. But I mean, they certainly made the biggest increase as far as like being a top, like 7-8 team to like a top 2 or 3 team. The Nets certainly, I think, are the favorites to me. Mentioned it earlier. I think they fit so well together. We know they're capable of playing big minutes. Need them to stay healthy, obviously. Need Ben Simmons to come out guns blazing there. But I'd probably say those are 1 and 2. Not a lot of movement in the West, huh?
No.
Warriors quiet, Grizzlies quiet, Jazz very quiet for the most part.
Yeah, Warriors quiet's interesting. I'm not sure what was really out there for them, but if you're Steph and Dre and Clay, you're probably thinking 2 things. You're probably thinking first and foremost, we're good enough to win a title as is because you got a lot of confidence from those title years. Secondly, you're probably in the back of your head thinking like, we got this Weissman guy. We got this Kuminga guy. Are they going to help us win a title now? Probably not. And are there pieces out there that could have gone out there and helped us win a title?
Yeah.
I think Miles Turner's injury probably put some things on ice that I think might have been more appealing to teams, just because I think the uncertainty of how Miles returns this year. But yeah, I think a little bit of a lost opportunity for Golden State. Mm-hmm. I would still say personally, if I was to put my money behind anybody, I still think I'd put Golden State at the top of the list, just because the way the Eastern Conference playoffs could shake out, you could have a team like Milwaukee or Brooklyn or Philadelphia or Miami that has to go through 2 of those matchups to get there. And just from an odds perspective, I'd rather have, I don't see anybody in the West really threatening Phoenix or Golden State. The way the teams are constructed right now. So, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe Utah plays really, really well if healthy. Maybe Memphis can play really, really well for a series. I just don't see it. And so I would still take my odds on the Western Conference, but I think the Eastern Conference teams are better than the Western.
It's like reverse, right? It's like when LeBron was on the Cavs
of the last 5 years. And then in the East, I agree with you. I think Brooklyn and Philadelphia got a lot better. I think Milwaukee and Miami were ahead of those teams. So I think they had room. But, man, those 4 teams to me in the East are very, very good. Mm-hmm. Miami, I think I have they got to get a little more scoring. They got to find a way. And this is where like a Dragic buyout or something I think would be interesting if they can land something like that. But they're so good defensively, but that main kind of starting lineup I think might struggle to score against some of the other defensive teams in the playoffs, and they might just be able to lock them up well enough. But man, those are going to be some grinds, some old school like 90s basketball Eastern Conference grinds with Miami in the playoffs. But those 4 teams to me are a step ahead. And then I think, if you look at the secondary teams or teams that you could maybe see making a run, Cleveland got a lot better, right? They get Caris LeVert for basically nothing, for Ricky Rubio, future draft compensation. So they get a lot better in terms of their depth. And I think Toronto just getting bodies, just getting Thad Young, even just getting another body in the mix, I think makes them interesting. Though I think Toronto's just going to run out of gas. I think they're playing their guys way too much.
They're playing so well right now, though.
They are. They're great. They're great.
Yeah.
But the problem is, this is what the Knicks did last year. They're playing playoff rotations against everybody else playing regular season rotations. And you can look a lot better than you are when that stuff is happening.
They've got so much better, and they're just a better team, man.
Oh, they are. They are, undoubtedly. But I'm just saying, like, the things look better when you're...
Like, honest, this is a hot take. Who's better right now? Well, who would you rather have? And just taking it, like, in a total vacuum, right? Would you rather have Pascal Siakam now or, like, Julius Randle when he was humming?
No, I'd rather have Siakam.
Yeah, for sure.
I would have said that. I would have said that last year when
you hate
too.
Randall too. So
yeah, Randall's not my favorite. Yeah, so we'll see. Winky saying P. Will, Caruso, and Lonzo ain't dead, y'all. Yeah, I mean, the Bulls could give these top teams a run in a series, get to like 5-6 games, but they're not. I don't think they're beating these teams without other injuries, kind of, hanging on things. And then Austin Carp noting, how do you value the Heat getting Oladipo and Morris? Markieff Morris is he doesn't move the needle at all. Oladipo was horrific last year when he played. He was one of the worst players in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know what version of Oladipo we're talking about.
And I'll add too, but when he came back the first time, he was horrible then. So long layoff.
It's been a long time since Oladipo was a good player.
Yeah.
So we'll see there. In terms of like trade deadline losers, I know I'm sure I can hear the Knicks fans humming around me, around Madison Square Garden here. There's nothing more than I love than the Knicks fan cycle, which is yell at the team to do something, get terrified when they do something. Then if they don't do something and you wanted them to do something, get furious. If they don't do something when you didn't want them to do something, rejoice. Whoever they draft in the late first round, crown the next Hall of Famer. And then, recycle and just keep doing this over and over again. It is total insanity. I love you all, Knicks fans. I grew up with you in South Florida, and I now live around you in New York. But you guys are crazy. In terms of like what the Knicks could have reasonably done at the deadline, I don't know. Like what they could have gotten some second round picks or something. Like, great.
They whiffed it. We actually forgot to talk about. We missed one. We missed the Montrezl Harrell side of the.
Of Charlotte. Yeah.
So let's just circle back.
Talk about how that impacts things on a fantasy perspective.
Yeah. I'll go for it first. Yeah. So probably no more of that crazy 7-man, right? Makes PJ Washington more of a 4-man.
Yeah.
So you're basically sliding guys up. Cody Martin be more of a 2-3 rather than the kind of a 3-4. Yeah. Actually, 1-4. They've been using him everywhere. A little bit of minutes upside. Obviously, Mason Plumlee will lose some minutes.
I think it hurts everybody.
Yeah, it hurts everybody.
Harrell gets a little bit better because his role's a little bit sturdier, but I think it hurts everybody.
Yeah. There's better offensive players around him, so I'd say he's kind of negative. But but my point was there was a chance that he wasn't playing 25 minutes a night. Now he has a chance to play 25 minutes a night. Okay, cool. Yep.
Like that's the only reason that I think Harrell has helped a little bit. They'll be weak defensively with Harrell in those minutes.
They'll play Miles at the 3 a little bit more too, so they'll just generally play a little bit bigger, and they weren't really playing ish anyway.
Yeah,
so.
Some rebound rates will take some hits there. Yeah. All right. Well, we spent an hour on the trade deadline. A ton of trades that went through. There were some smaller ones.
I didn't give any of my losers.
Oh yeah. So who do you have as big losers on the deadline?
A lot of bad teams didn't make trades, man. Like how did the Rockets not give up Eric Gordon? I hate that.
Yep.
I hate that the Pistons didn't really do anything significant. The Magic didn't do anything significant. Like, what are you doing, man?
What could the Magic have done though?
I mean, it gets like a 2 seconds for Gary Harris or Terrence Ross or
right.
something.
So like I get it, and I get fans get upset about this stuff, but in the grand scheme of things,
for sure,
it doesn't matter. Like this is the stuff that I talk about with like my Knicks fans friends all the time who are like, oh, the Knicks are great at drafting because they've hit on some late first round picks. And I'm like, yeah, they got rotation players from late first round picks, but they had a top 10 pick and they whiffed on Obi Toppin, who's like maybe at best a rotation player, not a starter. And so you get all the small decisions right and you get the big ones wrong. That's not good.
But just to get a chance to make a small decision, right?
It's
there's a player that you may have heard of that was a second round pick that turned out to be pretty good. I don't know. I just think it's worth it, man.
Better.
Like with the now that you have, it's kind of stupid, but like now that you have 2-way contracts, you have 2 extra roster spots, so you can kind of just take shots on guys.
No. I agree. It's absolutely, but it's the thing that like us basketball nerds get upset about. That really, at the end of the day, like we spend all this time like I used to get so upset when the Bulls gave up cash for Jordan Bell, right?
Yes.
It didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter. It's bad process, and you want a team to be executing a good process. But in terms of like how these things really move the needle in terms of championship odds and stuff, it's so infinitesimally small. It doesn't matter.
For sure. Do you think that would you say that either the Wizards or Mavs, or do you think there's a winner or loser off that? I mean, that's a huge trade to make. I think it's kind of TBD on basically Kristaps' knees again, which is the second time we're talking about this.
I have a hard time imagining a way that Dallas won that deal.
Yeah. They're taking on such bad money again. Like, it was like, now they get Tim Hardaway Jr.'s bad contract on the books, and now they're getting off it, and they're taking on Davis Bertans' bad money on their contract.
Yeah, so I have a hard time understanding how that is a long-term win for Dallas in any way, shape, or form. In Washington, like, man, they're in trouble. Lakers did not move Russ.
Yeah,
that did not happen either. So,
how cooked are they? Are they?
LeBron looked old last night, man. I mean, he was great. He was like, he still put up 37 and 7, but like he looked his age a little bit last night. There was not a lot of movement defensively from LeBron last night.
Yeah.
They're cooked. I think LeBron knows it. He was asked in the post-game interview after Milwaukee if they could be as good as Milwaukee, and he said no. Yes. So I think that tells you all you need to know about
this. This was the best tweet last night about it from Tim Reynolds. The Blazers had a 9-man team where 29 million, 34 players make more money than that. It's like, oh my God. What a great tweet.
Tough scene for the Lakers. Still, I need to get our content team that does such great work on the NFL side of things to start pulling some of our preseason clips talking about the Lakers, because
man,
we could have a field day on social media with that.
We actually cashed those, by the way. Lakers under wins officially.
That didn't take long.
Not even Valentine's Day yet.
Yeah, I remember specifically we were saying that the Lakers were favored by books to have 3 more wins than the Warriors, and we would give 3 wins and take the Warriors side of that. And we probably underestimated how bad the Lakers would be. Honestly, I thought this was like, I thought they'd be around the 6th seed, the like 6-7. 9-10 I wasn't really prepared for, but some other things have happened in the West too.
I think as like we kind of mentioned too, like we said, I think that the Mavs not really getting like much better.
Yeah.
Like those other teams like the Nuggets, I would have liked them to get a defender. Utah is kind of fine.
I will say on Utah, that was a great landing spot for Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest Nickeil Alexander-Walker guy because I think he's been really bad as an NBA player so far. But he is talented, clearly, and Utah has reformed some talented shoot-first guys into better role, like they did with Jordan Clarkson a little bit. They kind of rekindled his value. They had like a little bit of a run with Emmanuel Mudiay where he wasn't like the worst player in the league. So I actually think it was a really good landing spot for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. For fantasy purposes, it's not, because he's not going to play a ton. But for like rehabilitating his career, I thought it was actually a pretty good landing spot for him.
Yeah, off-ball game. His on-ball game's pretty bad, so I agree.
Yeah. All right. We did it. We made it through show number 2. As the great Ernie Banks used to say, we played 2. Let's play 3. Tonight, 5 o'clock Eastern, 1 hour from now, Mike and I will be behind the paywall at establishedrun.com breaking down this 7-game NBA slate, which our guys on the projections team have been working feverishly on updating all the minutes projections as all these trades come in today. So if you are subscribed to the premium DFS content, we will see you in an hour. If you're not, please make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page here to get all of our free content, get notifications whenever we're going live. Please consider smashing or pressing the like button to help circulate this free content so we can keep producing it for you. We'll be back in front of the paywall tomorrow, 2 o'clock Eastern time, breaking down the injury report with myself, Mike Gallagher, and Justin Fan from Underdog Fantasy. And Mike and I will see you behind the paywall in an hour. Enjoy the NBA games tonight, and we'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody.